dries a little better than the Provence variety, but we've been and that's called a lavandin. That's a hybrid. It's a cross between Lavandula angustifolia and Lavandula. You probably know, Rhonda, the cross. I forget the cross. You're right. Okay, but what is it crossed with? Lavandula angustifolia and Lavandula. Anyway, it's a hybrid, so, and it was developed in France because of its oil production and its hardiness. And I think the reason I think it does well here in Texas is because it can endure the extremes. You know, we can have the extreme heat, and then we get those really the cold snaps. And so I think it has a great range. And so that's what we would always sell at the farm, is the lavender, is the Provence variety. And they do have some out there at the Nature's, do you know Nature's Gate, Nature's Garden Farm? They have some Provence out there, I went to check. They also have some Lavandula angustifolia. And Lavandula angustifolia is what's called true lavender or English lavender, and it produces shorter. The thing about Provence, they create the very long stems, but the Lavandula angustifolia creates shorter stems. It often is darker purple, the color. A lot of times it's grown for, it's considered a higher quality lavender oil, and that's why people might, in production, they would grow it because there'd be higher value when they're selling it for perfume makers and aromatherapy and so forth. But they have that as well. That's another option. And now now there are about, I would say, 40 or something farms lavender farms in the Hill Country area, in the greater Hill Country area, and most of them have come through our seminar. And so any bad habits we had, we probably taught them to them too. But actually, a lot of the farms have branched out and gone to trying their own, experimenting, and have tried the true lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, and they found that the best thing for when you're growing in large quantities is to do a variety, because the Lavandula angustifolia is going to bloom earlier, and this is for, if in your own garden you can have a mix. The Lavandula angustifolia is going to bloom earlier than the lavandins, like the Provence lavender. And also in times when we've had times where there have been weird conditions, such as, I think it was in 2004, it was very cloudy all spring, and the blooms didn't come. I mean, they need the full sun. They need the sun to really activate. And it was terrible. I mean, here we were up in Blanco getting ready for a lavender festival, and there were just hardly any blooms. It was just too cloudy and cool, which is great for humans, but not lavender. So it was very distressing for when you had a farm to have that happen. But the Lavandula angustifolias do better in those conditions than the Provence. So that's another reason in your garden you might want to have both, have different blooming times. Also, if there's some strange conditions that, one way or the other, if it's just too hot and sunny, you still have the lavandins. If you get some clouds and stuff, and you'll have the angustifolias. And we always said, up at the farm, we would always sell rosemary and salvias too, because these are the plants you want to put it with. It's a xeriscaping plant. You can put it with those other low water plants, and don't put it on the sprinkler system, or don't put it next to something that needs a lot of water, roses or whatever. I mean, this is something that needs low water, well-drained soil. And I don't think you would probably do this, but when we would tell people to plant, doing their lavender farms, you'd always want to test the soil, because it needs a pH between 7 is kind of a great, 7 to 8 is the pH, alkaline. You want it alkaline. And I don't know if you guys would go to the trouble of testing your soil for a small garden, but that's basically rocky, kind of, a lot of that caliche that nobody likes is what it likes. So that's the kind of the soil you'd want. If you want to plant in pots, people ask about that all the time. You get a very big pot, because it's going to start off little, a little 4-inch plant, but it is going to really take off, and it gets about 3 feet around. This is the Provence variety because of the long blooms. They can when you plant them 3-foot centers, 3 feet, even though they're tiny little things, they'll just fill out. I think they're just so beautiful when they grow together as a kind of a hedge. It's just such a nice border, just all grown together. And we would do we'd have the long rows that look like caterpillars, when they're in bloom, all grown together. And then we planted them, we planted them 6 feet apart, but that's because we had the rows, because we had people walking through. You wouldn't worry so much about that. And the one thing that is important also is they need to be trimmed back in the fall. We like to trim them before the first frost, so we would get out there, in the hill country. That would probably be, we do it around in November. Sometimes we'd be surprised we get on that, but trim them back. And my husband and I had a big fight once about how much to trim back. He used to trim them way back. You would cut off 2/3. And I was like, those poor things. They were just the little steps sitting there. And so we had big fights about that. And I said, that's just too much. And so I had a few rows done and 1/3 trimmed back. Well, the next year, my rows were prettier. So he didn't like that very much. But I would say trim off 1/3. Don't go crazy with the trimming. But it helps, them to hunker down in the winter, and also helps when they come back again and start green, start flowering. It keeps that nice pom-pom shape. So it is something important to do, because otherwise they're going to be really straggly in the spring, which is not terrible, but it's just that nice, pretty, neat shape. So let's see, what else about the growing part? The other thing is that we did distill oil, and so we had a distillery, and we went through that whole process. That's not what you need in gardening. You're not going to be doing that, but it's just, you could even do it on a small, on your stove top. If you had, I know people who do that, and you're just capturing the steam and then condensing it. Is the distillation process. You could even do that if you had some bushes of lavender in your garden. You could do that if you wanted. The other thing you can do with lavender is, even if you have like 5 or 6 plants in your garden, is just towards the end you can cut it and use it as a cut flower for a bit. Then you can, after about 5 or 6 days, you can take it out of the water, cut off the wet ends, put a rubber band around it, hang it up, and let it dry. And then you'll have enough for sachet or potpourri, or if you're using the Provence variety is the variety that's good for cooking. You can use it in lavender desserts, and there's a whole cookbook, lavender cookbook. So that's what I really come to love about lavender is almost every part can be used. We even use this, after we dried it and took it off the stems, we used the dried stems my husband had the idea that they could be lavender, he called them lavender smokes. And you put them, not like this, not smoking, but you could either, in the summer, you could put them on the grill right before your chicken or fish, was done, just to give it a little lavender scent or taste. And in the winter, you could throw a few stems on the fire in your house or outdoor fire or whatever. So there is oil even in the stems, and there's oil in the leaves, and it's just such a versatile plant, and it's beautiful, and it has so many uses. So I just obviously I love it.
Did you have to fertilize it?
We did not, but people have done more research on it, and I think they've started. Now they started. I should say that we don't own the farm anymore. One of our loyal employees bought it from us after we moved to Mexico. I can get into that. But they have started doing fertilizer, and actually, I've used the fish. What's it called? The fish Fish emulsion, that's what I've used on it. So before, for fertilizing, but it doesn't need a lot. It doesn't, you know, it is a low maintenance plant in that sense. Other questions?
When you talk about the alkaline, you need to keep that balance all the time? Does it deplete the alkaline in the soil?
Well, usually in the hill country, it's naturally alkaline, and we never tested it after we tested it the first time before we planted. I assume that it stays pretty stable in that sense, because so much of the hill country has the alkaline soil.